immigration enforcement ramps up across the country, one organization is working to provide legal help to people facing deportation. WMTV's Nicole Herzog joins us live in studio. Nicole, the Community Immigration Law Center in Madison provides free legal services to help people navigate these often difficult cases.
Lee, the organization tells me Wisconsin's ICE detention facility is overflowing, which is creating high demand for legal services right now. But there are very few deportation defense lawyers in Wisconsin who do this work for free. Twice a month, the Community Immigration Law Center meets with people to offer free legal services. But with immigration enforcement a strict priority of the Trump administration,
for us, it's been how quickly we need to act. It's much faster.
Many are asking the organization for urgent assistance.
The one detention center that ICE uses in Wisconsin in Dodge County is beyond full right now of people who have been detained in Wisconsin. And lots of our people, Wisconsin being our people, are being taken to other states for detention.
One recent case involved Evelyn, who immigrated to the Madison area in 2018. She and her husband came to the U.S. because they were threatened by their country's government for their political views. We are not sharing her identity due to her fear of retaliation. Her interview was translated.
In February of 2019, my husband went to an ICE check-in and he was detained there.
Months later, Evelyn also faced deportation.
It was very difficult. I was alone with 2 children and in a different place.
But after hearing about CILC through a social worker, Aisa Olivares, the organization's legal director, was able to help Evelyn and her husband gather their documents and defend their reasons for fleeing their country.
Now we're here in a place where we can feel safety.
But with very few lawyers offering free services in the state, the organization is looking for help, including donations and volunteers.
So we're working really hard with communities to try and build up the resources in this giant gap between the number of people who are being alleged to be deportable right now and the resources that we have in our community.
Now, people can help by going to the Community Immigration Law Center website. If you are looking to schedule an appointment with the center, you can call the number on your screen. That's 608-640-4444. Live in studio, Nicole Herzog, WMTV 15 News.
Nicole, thank you. The clinic meets on the second and fourth Friday of every month.